Oops,
You're back.
I left too early.
It's okay.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, I think everyone is back. So let's spend a few minutes hearing from the different groups. So any group can start. So what were some of the things that you talked about in your breakout group? Anyone want to start?
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. We only got really to the first question, the role of government, and a few things that we talked about, the communications of actual truthful information, that the government, there should be this linkage of stakeholders, that there should be administrative functions in place that are prepared for crises, such as the one that we're facing.
Thanks, Janet. What about someone from one of the other groups want to share back what your group talked about?
We also talked about communications. We focused on the Governor Pritzker and Mayor Lightfoot press conferences, which we thought were helpful. One thing we're hoping for is testing, whether we have the virus or whether we have the antibodies that say that we're immune to the virus, and we hope our local government can help us get there faster.
Yeah, so an issue of funding healthcare there, I think. What about one of the other groups who hasn't shared?
Tracy, I think that's his name in our group, was pointing out that like the UN has all these policies that like basically make it illegal for like the government to not provide resources, but there's no accountability for that, and like all over the world.
I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing, both of you. Let's hear from a couple other groups who haven't shared.
Well, breakout group 2, we talked about role of government support, preparedness, and quick response is what we would like to see. And obviously, a lot of that has not happened. But the communicating honestly, we discussed as well.
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, sounds like a lot of similar themes coming up. I think there are maybe, I can't remember how many groups there were, but if your group hasn't shared, maybe a representative from that group share back what you talked about.
One thing that I believe is Jenny brought up in our group is around the care package, like that was just passed, and how it's very clearly seems to be more geared towards like stimulating the economy as opposed to meeting people's needs. So compared to like our neighbors to the north in Canada, where their folks are getting $2,000 per month for the duration of the crisis. So we talked about just the role of just really centering people's needs, not corporations' needs. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Laurel. Did any group not share? Is that everyone? Okay, we're gonna move forward then. So I think a lot of things probably come up with this question of what's the role of government in a crisis. It's a huge question. There's the question of transparency, of communications, of rapid response. And we're going to start kind of narrowing down that question and moving towards a discussion about specifically our state government and about funding of services to take care of people, which I think I'm hearing from the different groups is something that came up here, right? So how does this pandemic fit in with our conversation around state government, the fair tax, and our state budget moving forward? We just put together like a short couple slides to kind of transition us into talking about the fair tax. And I'm going to share those with you in a second. So we as I kind of said at the beginning, we already know that our state government wasn't adequately funding our communities, so housing, social services. But this pandemic is making, for me, I know even clearer that our government needs revenue and needs the fair tax. So we're going to share a little bit about what's going on in Illinois in terms of the economy and services, and then also in terms of our state budget. And then we're going to go straight into talking about the fair tax. So I'm going to go ahead and share these slides. So please bear with me for a second. So you should see this come up on your screen. Okay. So I also want to share that we're going to start this workshop by talking about some like heavy problems that we're facing. Like I think we're in a heavy moment. So I want to acknowledge that and say then we're going to move into talking about solutions and visioning for the future. So I just want to name that before we dig in here. So looking at our state, Illinois, and our state's economy and how that interacts with government. So I know like folks in my life, family and people I know have lost their jobs, which has meant that a lot of people are applying for unemployment, which is a 38% increase just this year. And a fact that we found was that 114,000 Illinois residents applied for unemployment benefits just last week. So obviously this is having a huge effect on not only our economy and also our government's ability to take care of people who are unemployed. But what aid are we getting? So someone mentioned the stimulus package. So our state government is going to get about $5 billion of the coronavirus relief package. But large chunks of that are going to be set aside for election assistance, law enforcement, and education emergency funding. So touching on some areas, but certainly not all the ones that we know we need. So in thinking about our state budget, how is this impacting social services, government programs, and the folks who need them? And I'm going to ask to hear from some folks in a second, but just 3 big examples that we picked out were housing. So we know that we already didn't have enough funding for affordable housing. We already had a housing crisis. And now a lot of people who aren't able to pay rent because they've lost their jobs and are living in market rate apartments. Oops, sorry. If we had robust public housing and affordable housing funded by government, they would possibly have a place to go. But that's kind of a particular strain, I think, that this pandemic is adding right now. And then, of course, the big one, healthcare, right, including mental health care. We don't have universal healthcare, and I know it's never been clear that we need it now. And then social services, we, again, also didn't have enough social services, and they've been cut over the years, and we'll dig into that a little bit. But now we have even more need. So I think overall, we know the government, our state government, should be funding these services, and it was already inadequate, but now the system is kind of buckling under the need. So this is a question to the group, so maybe we can hear from a couple people. But how do you see these services being impacted by the crisis? So these services provided by state government, or is there one that's not listed here that you want to highlight? Anyone can jump in.
Hey, I start? This is Tracy McClellan. Just a quick comment. I think that we could see collapse. So I just throwing that out there.
Hey guys, this is Sam. I live in Edgewater, and neighborhoods all over the city have created mutual aid societies, and that's making me feel a lot better about social services stuff. We're setting up to get stuff to people as they need it. And it's making me feel a lot more positive, because I don't think the city's going to be able to handle what we're going to be going through.
Thanks for that, Sam. Yeah, I think something this highlights for me is that we don't have the infrastructure in place through our government right now, and people are creating their own systems of taking care of one another in a moment like this. We're gonna have to move on for time, so I just want to share, and this is a segue in now to talking about Illinois and our state budget and our tax structure. But how does this impact our state budget? This is a big question. So I want to just lift up two things. One is what's called a rainy day fund. So in theory, our state should have a rainy day fund to take care of its people in a moment of crisis. Because of the way our government has not taxed the richest residents in Illinois and corporations, our rainy day fund is really low. It's only about $60,000. And to put it in perspective, our state budget, which lasts the whole year, is about $50 billion. So this rainy day fund covers only 30 seconds of one full budget year. And most other states have a rainy day fund that covers like about a month of a budget year. So for one example, in contrast, Indiana has $2 billion rainy day fund. I think the other big ramification for our state budget is that we're going to have less revenue than we would have because of a recession. So economists and state legislators are predicting a drop in revenue of 20% over the next couple of years, which is a reduction in more than $8 billion. So these two statistics are pretty heavy. They feel heavy on me, and they also make me feel really urgent about finding new ways for our state government to get revenue, namely the fair tax, so that not only can we sustain government functions given the threat that we're facing, but also continue to expand funding for the things that we know we need, like schools and housing and social services. So with that, I'm gonna pass it off to Alan, who's gonna talk about what our tax structure is in Illinois right now. So go ahead, Alan.
Thanks, Anna. So we've been talking about the need for revenue. So how does Illinois get its revenue? Well, 49% of the state's general fund's budget comes from the individual income tax. We have a flat tax rate structure in Illinois. Everyone, no matter how much you earn, pays at the same rate, currently 4.95%. This is a regressive tax. And along with our sales tax and local property taxes, we have a tax scheme that favors the wealthy over all other groups. The slide we're looking at now I'll get that back up. Shows the impact of state and local taxes in Illinois on income groups. So as you can see, the less money you earn, the higher percentage of your income goes to taxes. That's because all three systems, the income tax, the sales tax, and property taxes, are regressive taxes. So the people who make the most are paying the least amount in overall taxes as a percentage of their income. Now, swings in the general economy due to the dot-com bust in the early 2000s and the Great Recession in 2008, 2010 were major challenges to our state budget, with sharp drops in revenue in both cycles. However, there was no greater threat to the state budget than the Rauner-inspired budget impasse in 2016 and 2017. Our income tax rate dropped from 5% to 3.75% due to the sunsetting of the temporary 2011 rate increase passed by Governor Quinn and the General Assembly. So our state revenues fell by $11 billion, and we were facing 20% cuts in social services. And the Rauner's administration's patchwork solution was to slow pay its obligations. Unpaid bills reached a high of $15 billion, forcing many not-for-profits providing government services to either cut their programs, and sometimes even closed their doors. That created a great turnover in staffing as employees sought more stable, safer employment. Today, the backlog in unpaid state bills currently sits at $7.2 billion. And another negative impact of that impasse, with interest rate penalties running between 9 and 12%, Illinois paid in 1 year, $1 billion, or 5% of our budget, in interest penalties on its unpaid bills during the impasse. It's forecasted in the current budget year, we will continue to pay up to $320 million in interest penalties. While we are still recovering from that experience, we know that our current revenue scheme is not enough to guarantee stable budgets in the future while funding the services we need. While technically outside of the state budget, our high local property taxes is often raised in relationship to state spending. More than 60% of most property tax bills are devoted to school funding, and that's because the state only contributes no more than 40% to school funding. We cannot reverse this situation without more state revenue. But we have a solution on the table in the form of the Fair Tax Amendment to our Constitution, and Laura will take us through that proposal.
Cool, thank you, Alan. Hi everyone, a reminder, I'm Laurel. I organize with the economic justice team as well as the housing team at One Northside. So just as that, I think that helps kind of give the backdrop of where we are now. So remember right now we have the flat tax. Everyone, regardless of millionaire, billionaire earning, you know, a family earning $30,000 a year, everyone is paying that 4.95% rate. And yeah, I wanted to remind folks that I think that Alan and I we're kind of putting out some of these more like concrete numbers and facts, and they can be kind of confusing, or just like potentially you have some questions, more clarity. So feel free to pop those questions in the chat, and then we'll make sure, like once I wrap up my section, that we get those answered for you. So yeah, so what's the fair tax solution? What are we talking about? So I guess very, very simply, it means that folks who are earning more are going to be paying a higher rate in income tax. Folks who are paying less are going to be paying a lower rate in income tax. This is also known as a graduated income tax, and a majority of states already have a graduated income tax. That's also what the federal level has. So it's very regressive tax system that we currently have. The majority of our neighboring states also have a graduated income tax. And Illinois is one of the few states that has a flat tax structure actually written into its constitution. So there are 9 states nationwide with a flat tax structure, and Illinois is one of a few. I think it may be 4 that have it written into its constitution, which is why we're going through this amendment process in order to pass it. So the proposal on the table from the last legislative session is somewhat like the structure is somewhat based off of what Wisconsin has currently. So this table here will actually show you kind of concretely what it would look like, and I can explain this giving some examples. So first, I think a major point is that for 97% of Illinois residents, so all of those residents who earn less than $250,000 a year, they're actually going to see their taxes cut. So probably the majority of folks on the call will actually see taxes cut. For those making more than $250,000 a year, that's the section of folks that will be paying more. So the fair tax will use something called a marginal rate structure. I learned this recently. This is also very similar to the federal level, and so I'm just going to give an example, and I think remember in the background that 4.95% is where we're currently at. So this table shows kind of different income brackets. So let's say I make $36,000, and so what that means is for my first $10,000, that will be taxed at a marginal rate of 4.75%. So that those $10,000 will be taxed at 4.75%. That's what will go into my taxes. And then for the rest, so from $10,000 to $36,000, it'll be taxed at a rate of 4.90, which again is under what is current, which is 4.95%. And so and then you can see the orange box, those are the income levels, income brackets that will be seeing an increase. Something also to note is that for anybody making over $1 million, the idea of like a marginal rate will go away. So I will not be making $2 million when I graduate from social work program, but if I were to be making $2 million, all of my income would be taxed at that 7.95% rate. So I'm just going to pause here just so folks can kind of like digest that, see where, you know, you'll end up thinking about neighbors and friends, people you work with, and then you can feel free to pop any questions you have in the chat as well. And Anna wanted to send a reminder that we'll be sending these out afterwards, these slides out as well. And yeah, and we have like a one pager too. Will you be sending that out as well, Anna? There's a one pager that has some of this information. Okay, so with that being said, I think, I guess like to end, I think just like, again, reminding folks that like this 97% of Illinoisans will see a decrease.
Does not tax, let me finish, please. It does not tax retirement pay. It does, is that going to change?
Nope, it will not tax retirement pay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And altogether, this rate structure as it is now will generate around I'm forgetting now, 3.4 billion per year. And okay, so we have a question. So if someone's income is 1 million, all of that amount will be taxed at 7.95%. Yep, that's correct. Yeah, 1 million or over will be taxed at 7.95%. Or yeah, all of their income will be taxed at 7.95% because they no longer fit into the category where marginal rates are happening. Great. If there's no more questions there, I'm going to pass it off now to Megan, who's going to take us through sort of like a exercise just to now make this idea a little bit more concrete of each year raising revenue of $3.4 billion and what that could be spent on.
Yes, thank you, Laurel. Again, my name is Megan, and I think it's really important to emphasize the idea of when we get the fair tax passed, it's going to be $3.4 billion, as we said, and that's yearly. So that's going to be income that's coming into Illinois every year, and we can use that money to fund programs that we have or things that we need and things that we think that could benefit our community. So I think it's really important when we're imagining what this could look like for us as individuals, as a community, as a state, as a city. So what we're going to do is we're going to put up 6 categories that I just kind of brainstormed, areas that I thought might be really beneficial to have some additional revenue. And then if I could ask each of you to use the chat feature if you can, if not, just kind of shout it out. We're going to put those 6 categories up, and where do you want to see that money go? Like what is a priority to you? What do you think is going to be important? And so you can choose 3, so there's 6 up there. And if you end up choosing the other, if you could just drop in the chat what that other could be, and that's either something that you've noticed, something that's not in these 5 other categories. And then we're just going to kind of see where people's priorities are, what people are envisioning for their future. So if you can just start dropping them in the chat, and Anna's going to put them on the screen so that we all can kind of see where everybody's heads are at and hopefully get some ideas going. So we have schools, transportation, and housing. More housing. Oh, publicly financed elections. That's a cool one. Schools, healthcare. Oh, Anna, you better start pasting. They're rolling in. Transportation. A lot of healthcare. I think healthcare, especially right now, is really important. schools, housing, mental health, food security. Some more for healthcare, mental health, schools, healthcare for all, free public transit, 100,000 housing units, living wages for all government-funded programs, increased funding for a community care program, that's a good one, which funds homemaking services for seniors, food availability and security. So we have a lot right now on healthcare and mental health. Seeing some few. Housing's really important, I agree. So now everyone's put in 3, and then we're gonna keep looking to the future. So it's 2022 now. We have $3.4 billion more dollars. So 3 more things. We can build on that. We can use that money to build every year for our community. So if you just keep putting in, you get 3 more options now because we have $3.4 billion more dollars. So we can just keep building on that. So drop 3 more in. It can be the same 3. It can be different 3. More support for those with mental illness for housing and ongoing mental health support. Parks, that's a good one. Mental health, campaign finance reform, more schools, more healthcare, more housing, preschool for all. That's very important. I used to be a preschool teacher. Infrastructure. We have a lot more on schools, healthcare, and housing. That one's looking really full. Yes, oh my gosh, this is making me very excited. Education, transportation, and then it's now 2023. We have $3.4 billion more dollars, so keep putting them in the chat. I want this whole thing to be super full with all of these billions of dollars that we're going to be getting. So just keep sending them in. Education, transportation, bikes, love bikes. Yes, job training, transportation, yes, that totally, repairing roads and bridges. I could go into transportation, that could be another, mental health, human needs, yeah, true. A people first use for this money, I think is definitely really important. Pre-K through college education for all, housing, job training, infrastructure, yes. These are making me very happy. I love this. There's some really good ideas here. There's definitely a lot of emphasis on education, emergency preparedness. I think that totally is coming to light now in our recent things of a lack that we have. Prison reform. Oh my gosh, I'm loving all of these ideas. Mental health. All right. You guys all have really awesome ideas. More prison reform, public health efforts needed, for example, of our current crisis. Yeah, I think this is a really big tell our current situation on where we need the money and what is a priority. Arts, yeah, arts in schools, arts as community resources. Arts can fall under a bunch of those categories for sure. Yeah, an adequate standard of living and health for all people. Definitely, Tracy, under the UN Declaration of Human Rights. I think that kind of touches on every category that we have up here, making sure that people's basic needs are important and a priority to the government, and making sure that we have the resources to have that standard level of care and standard level of adequate living for each person. Yes. All right, so now that we have been just brainstorming, there's so many ideas here. I love how many are in the other category. This is really exciting for me. Healthcare for all, definitely. A focus on people is kind of what I'm seeing a lot of here from the chat, just really focusing on people first and meeting the needs of people as a priority instead of putting government or the economy as a priority, really making sure that people are at the center and the forefront of everything that we're doing, and I think that that's really important. All right. So if you guys are able to see this, hopefully you can see that there's kind of a bunch of dollars scattered over everywhere. And I think that this paints a really interesting picture for us when we are talking about what this fair tax could mean for us immediately, but then also what it could mean for our communities in the future. Because all of these now, with all these categories we see, they're all pretty equal, which means if you can just picture what that would look like for us and see how maybe over years and years we won't have to be plugging in money to fill deficits, because we'll have already filled all those, hopefully, and then we can just build upon that, and we can make sure everyone has what we need, and then dream bigger on how can we make it better. Everyone has their needs met because we have this additional revenue, and now we can just look for a better future, a more comprehensive, better resources. Now that everyone has access, we can make everything better. The standard of care and accessibility can go higher and higher. So now that we have these dollars, I know we got some specifics, but I would like to just kind of take a little bit of a poll for the group and just kind of get some really concrete, tangible things. You guys were putting some of them in the chat, but see if people wanted to kind of share out on what those things were and why they decided to put their little dollar signs there. So if we can, I'm trying to see if I can see all of you. So if anyone wants to kind of share out a specific reason why they decided to put their funds there and what that could physically, like tangibly, like what do you want that actually to look like? We can do it in the chat, or if you're comfortable talking out loud, we can do it that way as well. Whatever is easier for you. If you want to put it in the chat, I can read it out loud. But if you want to share out now, that was totally fine as well. I would love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, I'll say I chose transportation because I think like if there was more funding for transportation, then there could be like more routes and it could run more frequently, and CT workers would get paid more, and potentially even fares could be lower, and then that would incentivize more people to take transit instead of driving, which is also really important for climate reasons.
Yeah, I think transportation is one of those things that affects so many categories. Like you're saying, it would benefit the environment. If people have better access to transportation, that can help with jobs and accessing jobs and employment for people. So I think transportation is one of those categories that's going to have a lot of benefits other than just like improved trains on the CTA or improved buses. It's going to affect lots of areas of people's lives. Is there anybody else that would like to share out?
So I talked
I just wanted to share.
Oh, two people. Whoa.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I healthcare is really important. I just read today before this meeting started on that 70% of the deaths in Cook County from COVID are among African Americans. And, I didn't give details on zip codes and things like that. But, I can't help but thinking that we're looking at people who are struggling with poverty and thus limited health care. And now when this crisis hits, I think there's going to be a great disparity among people who are affected directly get the COVID virus by zip code, that people living in the Northside are going to get it at less, lower rate than people living in the South Side. And, part of this is pre-existing healthcare medical conditions.
Yeah, I think this specific situation that we're all in right now really just highlights where our city is at and things that we don't have in place. Either we're not where we thought we were, or just shows how far behind we actually are, and like what having this additional revenue could have meant for Illinois as if we were handling this situation. Now, if we had already had a progressive income tax structure, like just thinking about like what could possibly have been different now, especially when it comes to healthcare, I think that's really important. There was someone else that was speaking. I couldn't see who it was.
Yeah, I was just going to share about why I thought schools was important. I think that in the time that I've lived in Illinois, which has been 4 years, it's been really surprising to me seeing a lot of things like school closures, and it seems like that's just an area that we don't seem to be super invested in. as a state, but I think that investing in education means a lot for the health and well-being of everyone, and creates more opportunities for people. And an area that I'd especially like to see built out in light of the COVID-19 crisis is like digital resources and access to internet for everyone, because we're seeing that it really highlighting an inequality here, that not everyone has equal access to getting education in general, and especially when we're in a crisis situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that our public schools are underfunded enough as it is, and a situation like this really makes that very prevalent to people, and seeing what we have and what we don't have. And obviously, like, education is something that all people deserve to have and should have a certain standard quality to, that clearly we can see is not being met at this moment. Is there anybody else? Any other specifics or ideas, or just reactions to the activity in general, about how you guys think it went, how you felt with seeing all those dollar signs? 30% infection rate in African American. It was only about 12% of the population. Wow, that's a huge percentage difference. Thank you, Carrie. You guys can see in the chat what Carrie put in there about how this is disproportionately affecting African Americans. It's really important, and that just shows access to healthcare and quality medical care for all. Any other reactions or comments on how you guys felt about this activity, or specifics that you guys wanted to share?
This is Nana. I've been working or talking about the fair tax for a while, and if the fair tax passes, if we wouldn't have had this crisis, we were hoping that we could fund the programs that were cut during Ronner's administration. And now it's questionable whether the fair tax, although it will help, we'll still be struggling to get the money we need for all of our services that we still need.
Yeah, I think that this economic thing that is already starting to happen, and is obviously going to continue to happen as this keeps the ball rolling on how we're handling the situation, is definitely going to be affected. But I think that just the idea of this fair tax isn't necessarily going to fix every single problem that Illinois has and all the issues that we have, but it's a very good start, and it's the first step in making sure that we're moving in the right direction as a city and as a state, and making sure that with this additional revenue, and hopefully also obviously like other outside resources, we can start putting those things in place to one day have all those programs back, and to have even more programs and more resources, and just making sure that as a state that we're moving in a positive direction that's going to be benefiting all people. Thank you guys so much for all your comments. Anyone else have any last?
Could I ask a question? I don't know, maybe you're going to talk about this. What is the chances of this amendment being passing? What's the idea of thinking about it? I mean,
that's actually a perfect segue into what we were going to talk about next.
Okay.
So I can just start going right into that. That's an excellent question, and definitely something that we should be talking about. So basically the way that this is going to go, I know Laurel mentioned earlier that it is, obviously it was an amendment that we now have to edit the Constitution. So how that's going to work is, obviously it's on the ballot in November, and in order to get that to pass, so I'll just kind of take a picture of like what the ballot looks like. Obviously you have all the general election questions, and then you'll have separately the question about the fair tax. So it's the key ballot initiative. So you can actually submit your ballot completed and not have answered this question, which I think is a really important thing to really hone into people. And this is kind of confusing, so if you guys have questions during this, you can just drop them in the chat and I can answer them. But basically, this is an entirely voter-driven yes or no. So when you have your ballot and you go to fill out all the other questions that you have on the general ballot, and then you'll have the separate area for the fair tax question, and you vote yes or no. So the two ways that this gets passed is if 50% of the people who vote in general whether or not they voted on this question, say yes. So you can submit your ballot and not have answered this question. So 50% of the entire voting body vote yes, or specifically people that answered that question, 60% need to say yes. So there's those two differing percentages just because you cannot answer the question, which is why I think this work that we're doing here and meetings like this and conversations like this are just so important, because if you're voting in November and you don't see it, you don't know to look for it, or you see it but you don't know what it is, you can just not answer it. If you don't know what you're voting on, some people might just say, oh, I just won't vote on it. But obviously this is so incredibly important and we need to get this passed. So I think this really is important for people to know about and to be telling people. So, you know, you guys know, and then when you talk about it with other people you know, or it gets closer to the election, you bring that up so they know to look for that question so we can hit either that 50 or that 60%. Do those percentages make sense to people? And did that answer your question on how to get this done? So it really is just people voting on it, people voting yes, because once we hit either of those two thresholds, it automatically goes into effect in 2021. Oh, where'd the question go? They're not sure, Nana, where it's going to be located on the ballot yet, and we don't necessarily have the wording, but we just know it's going to be separate from the other like standard list of questions that you have on there. They were working on that wording and things like that, and then obviously COVID kind of came and is really taking the priority on a lot of things, so we don't have the exact wording or things like that. It's going to be at like a separate area. So just making sure that you're looking out for that.
I just like to point out that it strikes me that the way this spells it out as being set up on the ballot with either the 50% or the 60% seems like that it's stacked against this vote happening in a positive result, which points to the fact that it's all the more important that people become aware to look for it and to then vote for it, because it looks like the ballot is being set up so that people can, and they want people to ignore it so that it won't pass.
Yeah, I think that's a really good and important point, Carrie. I think because it's set up this way, which I believe is just because it's an amendment to the Constitution, so it has to be separated from the general questions, but it does have that negative like potential effect of people not knowing and not voting and not seeing it, which really kind of brings us, as long as everyone's clear on this, we can kind of move into the next section. That's a good segue. Just kind of shows how important the work is and how important the meetings here. Yeah,
Megan, I've got one thing to enforce this is that it took us 10 years to get the General Assembly to pass its own referendum to put it on the ballot. And if we don't pass it this time, it will never be seen again in our lifetime. So that's how important this is.
Yes, 100%. And honestly, for me, I think that's what makes these Zoom meetings, which is what we have now, these workshops, these conversations that we're having with people, so incredibly important, because at this point, we've done all of the pre-work. We fought for years and years to get that resolution passed, and like now it is, and now it's solely in the hands of the people of Illinois, whether we're going to get this or we're not. And for me, whether there's no not option, I'm only thinking about when we have this. And I think that just comes from conversations. That comes from telling your neighbor, telling your friend, telling your family, hey, did you hear about this? Or, hey, when it gets closer to November, when you guys go to vote, like make sure you look for that question. Here's what it is. Because when you think about it, to me, graduated income tax structure just makes a lot of sense. And it's obviously we call it like a fair tax, and it makes a lot of sense. And it's something that when you explain it to someone, you tell them what it is, they're like, oh yeah, totally, I want that. How do I do that? And that's just a simple conversation that you can have with somebody to get that clarity across, so that when they do go to vote, they know exactly what they're looking for and they can vote yes. And then we can have this. So that just ties into the importance of the work that One Northside and so many other organizations in Illinois are working to do right now. And it's work that we've been doing for years, decades, trying to get this passed. And like Alan said, this is actually the key ballot initiative in the country this upcoming November. So this issue is bigger than our communities, neighborhoods, city, state. It's everywhere is looking at this. And if it doesn't pass in a state like Illinois right now, first of all, those other 8 states that we mentioned aren't going to be able to do it. And Illinois is not going to have another chance because we've fought for so long. And if you think about it, no one's going to, if it doesn't pass because we didn't vote for it, which politician who is going to want to stick their neck out for something that clearly the people aren't as supportive of? And actually, they've been saying that if this doesn't pass, they either have to raise taxes on everybody or cut spending by an additional 15%. And if we are just very transparent, I think we all know which one they're going to choose. They're not going to raise everybody's taxes. They're going to cut spending. And I think it's very clear from conversations that we've had that there's already not enough funding for all of these services. So an additional 15% cut could be detrimental to people, to resources, to organizations. And that's what we're facing if this doesn't get passed, which really just creates a huge sense of urgency around it and making sure that we're having those conversations. And then just for me personally, I know we mentioned those 8 other states. I moved to Chicago in August for my master's, to start my master's program, and I love it here. I'm incredibly happy. I've met amazing people and organizations and had amazing experiences with people, and I'm fully dedicated to this for Illinois. And I think that it's a long time coming in a state like Illinois that's so progressive and forward thinking should have this. It makes sense for us to have this structure in place and to put people as a priority. But I'm from Pennsylvania. You can see my Philadelphia is awesome sign behind me. And Pennsylvania is one of those states that has it written in the Constitution and has a flat tax structure. So for me, I'm fighting for all the people that I've met here and the wonderful city and experiences that I've been able to have. But I'm also fighting for one day to be able to fight for my grandmother and my parents and my uncles and my family back home in Pennsylvania who would also benefit from a structure like this. So if a state like Illinois that's super progressive isn't able to get this done, Pennsylvania's never gonna have a shot. So I think that this is a lot bigger than us. I think it's bigger than the people you know. It's for the people you don't know. It's for hopefully for Illinois, and then for those 8 other states as well. It's for my family back in Pennsylvania, because there's absolutely no movement in Pennsylvania on this, and people in Pennsylvania are gonna be like, well, if Illinois couldn't do it, Pennsylvania, no shot. Like we're never gonna do it. Tammy, Pennsylvania, yes, I love Pennsylvania so much. It makes me so happy. So that's just kind of where I'm personally invested in this and why I think it's so important and why I've been putting in this work and having these conversations. So now we're going to toss it over to Laurel, who's going to explain some potential next steps and the work that One Northside is doing on this.
All right, great. And Nana basically took my section, which is great. Nana already knows what we have to do. Nana said we need to do town halls in our communities, churches, schools, etc. Agreed. So we're going to talk about, I think we're all here because we want the fair tax to pass in November. We know what's at stake if it doesn't pass, and so the question is, how do we get that done? So just to give an overview for folks who don't kind of understand the structure of the larger campaign. So this is a statewide coalition, more than a dozen, I meant to get the number before, but I think way more than a dozen organizations are part of this coalition. I personally got involved because I'm an intern in the housing team, and I went to the campaign kickoff, and I was just like so energized. It was really amazing to be in a room with so many people from across the state who are like excited about this issue, and so that was really exciting for me. And so the statewide coalition has a goal of really focusing on getting pledge cards. So that's just it used to be paper, and now there's also digital, which is what we'll be pushing out. That says, I will vote yes on the fair tax on my ballot in November. So the goal is to get 400,000 of those pledge cards statewide. And then One Northside and all of the other organizations have sort of taken out a slice of that pie. And so for One Northside, we've committed to 3,100 pledge cards. And so what are some of the things that we're doing from now until November? And then I'm going to go into I think as I'm saying this, you can think about, okay, what can I do? How can I plug into what Laurel's saying? And then I have like some concrete things next, and we'll have you fill something out before you go. So we're having public workshop series like this one. And I'll also just say, like the campaign rally was like probably 2 months ago. And so you can easily, learn this stuff within a few weeks and be doing a workshop like I'm doing in somewhere in your community as well. So we're also building support in local congregations, nonprofit organizations, community organizations. It's really awesome to see so many folks representing different organizations and congregations today. We're going to, One Northside has an annual convention that's likely going to be pushed from the June date to somewhere closer to election time. And that's going to be really, a lot of it is going to be focused. It's a public meeting. A lot of it's going to be focused on the fair tax campaign. So a big kind of final push. And then there's going to be phone banking and canvassing. Phone banking will be starting in the next few months. And then similarly, canvassing will be starting once we're able to safely do that kind of door by door on the streets. And so, yeah, just really focusing on sharing information about the fair tax campaign, because I think, as Megan said, the majority of people, when they hear it, it's sort of a no-brainer in a way. I mean, not everyone, but it's once we get that information out there, I think that's the most important thing right now. And so I would love to hear from maybe 2 or 3 folks on how you see this work happening at your local organization, a community you're part of, or congregation. And again, kind of focusing on like how would you see getting these pledge cards?
This is Nana from Jane Addams Senior Caucus, and we're pretty much doing what you're doing at One Northside in terms of having some town halls like we had today at senior buildings, and maybe some churches, synagogues, and so on. And also the pledge card idea and doing phone banking.
Awesome, thank you. 1 or 2 other folks want to share? Oh, Rachel?
Oh, yeah, I'm thinking about, I have some family in the Peoria area, and I feel pretty, distant from them. But I think, because this is statewide, this is, something I could activate them on, because it would definitely help them.
Nice, that's awesome.
So as I said earlier, at Fourth Presbyterian Church, we were planning on doing some type of forum right before the election. So, thinking that people don't always retain all that knowledge that's given to them over the course of months. So, what about, as far as getting these pledge cards, I mean, what kind of time frame were you thinking of? Do you want to get those commitment cards much sooner, I'm guessing?
I mean, I think it's throughout the whole campaign. I think the nice thing about getting them sooner is then it's getting folks involved who may have some time or be interested in phone banking or canvassing or talking to their friends and neighbors. Because the pledge card is, yes, a commitment, and it's also just a way for them to kind of be plugged in. They'll get periodic updates. But I think it's both and. It's whatever whatever feels right for kind of your community. And yeah, but I do love the idea. I think it is really important to have events right before the elections as a kind of reminder of that coming up.
And then I also have a question about, I think you had said that this is a no-brainer. Once people understand this, it's it's a no-brainer. Of course, this amendment should be passed, except for people who are really wealthy. And yes, for them, it's a no-brainer to vote it down, and they have lots of power and right, influence. And so do you all have an argument to present to people who are against this?
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe toss that to Anna if this was something that came up in our last one too. And I will say we have sort of creating something around what are the arguments against, and what are kind of the arguments that the Fair Tax Campaign has against those arguments. I'm also, but Anna, do you want to answer that? And then we'll go into kind of the concrete community action stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think to briefly answer that, then I'll pass it back to Laurel. I think it depends on that person's own self-interest, right? Like, I think for me, something that's really sobering is this idea is that if we don't do this, we are going to cut services, we're going to cut public schools, we're going to cut infrastructure, and that affects everyone, or we're going to raise taxes. And if we raise the flat tax, that's a tax increase for them as well. And then also, I think just the fiscal responsibility argument can work there of we just have simply too many unpaid bills and interest payments that we owe in order to be fiscally healthy as a state moving forward, and more revenue isn't a choice. So I think it's a matter of understanding kind of what that person cares about in their community and trying to use that as a bridge to make this seem compelling to them. But it's a good question, and I will send out this like opposition messaging document, which is kind of like almost like a 102 fair tax training after this, with the additional documents, so folks can take a look at that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that point up. I think it's a really important one. Okay, so we have about 4 minutes. I'm gonna take us into a little bit more concretely from the things we mentioned, what you all can sign up for. And so I'm gonna go through these, and then Anna's gonna put in the chat both a link to a pledge card and also a link to a Google form. And you'll be able to check off these different items within that. Oh, that kind of went away. Let me see if
Here, I'm gonna put it back. I'm just putting the links in really quick.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so the first important thing is just to send out pledge cards to people in your communities. I think it's really important that there's kind of a connection there as well. So talking with them about it, even if it's an email, sending some lines about why you're supporting this. And then talking with your friends, family, book club, coworkers, anyone you're in contact with. And I think that think about even during the COVID pandemic, is there something that you're kind of regularly doing, a Zoom call with friends or family, and how can this kind of become part of a conversation with them? And so, I think these conversations can be something very informal, or it may be a regular staff meeting you go to where you take 10 or 20 minutes to talk about the fair tax. And then if you feel like getting more involved with One Northside's campaign, you can also set up a phone call or a video call with an economic justice team member, just to learn more about how to get involved. And then on Thursday, April 16th, from 6 to 7:30, the economic justice team is going to be having a Zoom meeting. So there are monthly meetings, and that's a way to kind of help with the strategy around the campaign, and just another way to get a little bit more involved if you feel like you have that time. Then you can sign up for phone banking, for canvassing, and we left a space for other if you happen to have some creative idea that you think of. So I'm going to give just a few minutes for folks to fill those out. Does anybody have any issues seeing those? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna give a couple minutes, and I have some music that I'm gonna put on for like 2 minutes, so I can get it to start after the commercial. Oh, Carrie says I can see it but can't fill it out. Is it in the view mode? Oh, okay. Anna put up the document that you'll be able to fill out. And Anna said, sorry, it's not a link. You'll have to copy and paste it into your internet browser.
I don't understand what we are looking at. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
What we're supposed to be filling out.
Yeah, are you in the chat box? Can you see in the chat box a link?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can copy and paste that into your browser.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it will give you a form with check boxes of items on how you may want to get involved.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and also just say I see that it's 5:30, so if anybody needs to go, that's fine. I think I'll just leave like one more minute, and then we're gonna just finish out really quickly. Is there a set of approved messages and an FAQ about the fair tax to use in talking with people? So we do have a fair tax sheet that Anna will be able to send out, and I'm not sure, is there a FAQ?
Yeah, there's an FAQ on the back with some of these like frequently asked opposition questions.
Great. All right, so I know that folks may still be finishing up, but just because we're at time, it would be great if you could write in the chat, if you're comfortable, one thing that you plan on doing to help Illinois win a fair tax. And I'll just read some of them out, and then we'll say our goodbyes. And Nana had said something, I think this was kind of to the question previously on, is it too early or when is a good time? I think Nana said they just had a town hall to educate people, and then the idea is to have follow-up conversations with folks one-on-one. And she doesn't think it's too early to conduct those Zoom meetings. Okay, so send pledge cards, social media, great, educate at St. Gertrude's, town hall. Wonderful. Thank you everyone so much. We look forward to seeing you virtually and eventually in person again. And yeah, just a reminder to fill out the pledge card, fill out the Keep Me in Action, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right, have a great day. Be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Is anyone still here?
I think Francis still is. That was good.
That was really good.
I got a little. I just feel bad keeping people late, so I kind of like wrapped it up quickly.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It's okay. Yeah, I think we need to leave 15 minutes for that piece, just to like have people actually fill out both things. Like it always just takes time.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you'll see if like they all get in, and then if they don't, then
yeah, we can take people down. I put down a list of everyone who came, so we can always take people down if they didn't.
Cool.
Yeah, nice work. I thought it went so smoothly.
Yeah, me too. There was like, I was just waiting for something to mess up a little bit. But no, it was cool. The breakouts were really fun too, honestly.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I thought it was. I think it's a really cool way to, to make it feel more like workshop-y.
Yeah, I know. I always regret as the host that you just have to like sit in the main room by yourself.
Oh, I got to be with Megan, which was fun. I was like, oh, hey, Megan. Oh, that's funny.
Well, we should do a debrief or something next week.
Yeah.
Send out an email about that. I don't know, like everything's different now. Are you still doing Monday, Friday, one Northside, or is it like more?
I need to figure out, because I'm sort of just like doing it here and there, but I would like to keep kind of, but not really. I'm pretty open. But I'm pretty open to other times, but I also tend somehow my schedule has been pretty full. But just like let me know, or like do you want me to let you know now, like when?
Oh, that's fine. I think I'll shoot for like we could just do Friday. If
Okay, Friday. Yeah, Friday would be good.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'll just send out like a doodle or something and find some time on Friday.
Okay. All right. Well, have a good rest of your
Thanks,
day.
Laurel.
See ya.
Good rest of your evening.
Yeah.
Bye.